Ooh, so let's get a little bit political. Leave in the comments who you're voting for. I'm just kidding. You don't do that. I'm just joking. That's actually one thing I'm not going to do is I don't want to get political talking about The Apprentice. I know it's really hard not to given what it's about, but it was one of my most anticipated films of the year, specifically because it was directed by Ali Abbasi. And if you're not familiar with who he is, his last film was The Holy Spider, which was amazing. Like, if you've not seen that film, you should definitely check it out. It's so good. He also has two other films. I think it's Shelley and Border, which I actually ended up buying those on Blu-ray, but I haven't watched them yet. But I really enjoyed The Holy Spider, so I was very excited to see what he did next. And it just so happened it was The Apprentice, which is a biopic about a young Donald Trump. The interesting thing about this film is, and I'm going to be completely honest about my thoughts with it, I think that this film is completely different than what a lot of people are expecting it to be. I actually enjoyed this film a lot, like seriously, a lot. It was, I'm kind of well, I don't want to say I'm a weird moviegoer because I like all kinds of films, but that's just something about me where you have some people that like a certain type of film, like some people might like horror films, or they might like comedies, or they might like comic book films, or really just any genre, or maybe they like one or two genres. Me, I like everything. I'll watch everything. I will literally go watch, or I will watch like an art house film like Seconds, okay, with Rock Hudson in it, which I will make a film or a video about, and then I'll go watch The Apprentice, and then I'll go and watch Terrifier 3. Like, there is, like, when it comes to films, I have no limits. I'll watch anything. I just love cinema as a whole. So going into The Apprentice, I knew that there was a chance that I could definitely fall in love with this film. Because it's about Donald Trump? No. Because of the stuff behind it. Because of the people that are in it. And also, after seeing footage of The Apprentice, I was very pleasantly surprised. Like, this is definitely the film to go watch after you've watched Succession. Like, you will get a certain level of hype that you probably wouldn't get otherwise. Now, the film stars Sebastian Stan as Donald Trump, Jeremy Strong as Roy Cohn, which Jeremy Strong is one of my favorite actors working today. I would love to see a gold statue in his hand. He is phenomenal. He's fucking great. I love Jeremy Strong. He is such a terrific actor. And then you have Maria Baklova, who's playing Ivana Trump. And then you also have Martin Donovan, who plays Fred Trump, which he is almost completely unrecognizable in the role. It's actually very well executed. I enjoyed it so much. His performance was just, he was one of those weird characters where you kind of notice their arc where you don't like them at first, and then you kind of look at them and you're like, oh, damn, dude, I kind of feel bad for you. And that leads me to the elephant in the room, Donald Trump. I just, look, I will be completely honest. With The Apprentice, I don't think The Apprentice is going to make you want to vote for Trump, but at the same time, if you're already like a big Trump fan, I don't think it'll deter you away from it, because you got to remember, there's a lot of people that they'll watch a film that's about somebody, and they could, I mean, when you're watching a film, you're obviously watching a more fictionalized version of that. Now, granted, let's just say that the film was fictionalized a little bit, but then there was also a lot of truth. Like, you could say the film is 90% true and 10% is over-exaggerated. The general audience is still going to think it's over-exaggerated no matter what, because it's a film. So that was the interesting thing about The Apprentice, was the approach that they took, because it follows a young Donald Trump in the 70s and 80s as he's sort of building his empire and his wealth. My theater, there was 4 of us in total. There was an old woman in the back that was on her phone constantly, and then there were 2 women in front of me that were older that were laughing at like everything, which was starting to make me laugh. And it was just like, because their laughter was so contagious. Like, it was such a fun theater experience, even with just a small crowd. But I think having a director like Ali Abbasi tackle this film specifically was definitely the right move. Like, it needed to happen, because I feel like once you get like an American to talk about this film, somebody that was born and raised in the country, I think that's where you're going to have some problems, because you're definitely going to get a bias with it. And I'm not saying that there's not a bias at all with Ali Abbasi, because I could definitely think that this film is definitely catered to a more specific audience, which me, I'm not really a political person, so I can just accept it for what it is in terms of performances and filmmaking and sort of the point that they're trying to get across, which is something that I'll get into in a second. But Ali Abbasi, he seems pretty neutral on the matter, where I'll get to what I was actually saying, where I don't think he's actually trying to deter people away from Donald Trump. I don't think he's actually trying to make Donald Trump look like this horrible dude. I don't think I really just don't think he's trying to do any of that. What I think he's trying to do is he's trying to take a relevant subject matter, because I was listening to his whole panel at Cannes, and I think he's trying to take something that's very relevant right now in the cultural zeitgeist and sort of flip it on its head to show people like, hey, not only is this Donald Trump and how I feel about him, but also this is what happens when you take somebody and you give them too much power. This is what they turn into. And I feel like the film itself is more so a strong metaphorical message on this is what happens when you have too much money. This is what greed can do to somebody. This is what wealth can do to somebody. This is what having a broken family can do to somebody. Because regardless of anything, there's some people that think some people are born evil. Some people believe some people aren't born evil. I personally don't think people are born evil. I think people are kind of just morphed into things as they get older, you know? And I think that is a very powerful message to give out to people. And again, whether you believe in that or not, it's completely fine. But again, you look at Donald Trump's character at the beginning of this, which was extremely likable. Like, I was very surprised how much I was kind of rooting for the guy at the beginning. And just because I don't think anybody should feel bad about that. I think you should look at him as human. You know, like, that was one thing that I think Ali Abbasi was trying to do, was humanize this situation and character. Because if you don't, then at that point, it almost turns into satire. This film could have easily have been satire. It could have easily have pissed off non-Trump lovers, and it could have easily have pissed off Trump lovers, where if you give Trump too much credit, it's going to piss off a lot of people that don't like him, and you don't give him enough credit, it's going to piss off people that do like him. I feel like they sort of hit the nail on the head, where I don't think they were even trying to please anybody or not please anybody. I literally think that they were just trying to throw out this message, hey, this was a normal guy, this was a dude that built some wealth, now this is what he's turned into, or at least this is what the media thinks he's turned into, or this is what you think he's turned into. That's sort of the thing that I liked about it, was you can sort of watch it and sort of get your own perspective, which is something you don't really get with a lot of biopics, because you sort of watch things like, there's a lot of horrible things that Trump does in this movie. And while, of course, you know, nobody was there, nobody knows, you're just watching it on the screen, it still feels very real, and it sort of opens up a conversation where you're like, ooh, okay, did he do that? Let me look into that. You know, like, it doesn't do it satirical where you look at some biopics and you think, hey, okay, this was a little bit overdone, I'm not buying it. No, The Apprentice, like, it will probably make you want to do a lot of research on Trump. Like, it's that good, I think. And I think Sebastian Stan's portrayal of Donald Trump was just absolutely amazing. He had a lot of courage, I think, to take on the role. And Jeremy Strong is Roy Cohn. I mean, he had a lot of courage to take on the role as well. Again, I'm not a political person. I don't, I don't know too much on the story of Donald Trump and Roy Cohn, just the stuff that I listened to before the film, just to sort of brush up some things, just so that way I could kind of be a little bit more educated watching the film. But for the most part, they seem pretty on point. Like, I seen somebody do a review for The Apprentice, and he was like, when I first saw Jeremy Strong, I was like, who is this cartoon motherfucker? The thing is, that's how Roy Cohn acted in real life, you know? And if you notice, there's specific mannerisms that Sebastian Stan sort of adopts for Donald Trump as the story goes on, where at first when I was watching it, I was like, okay, this doesn't feel like Donald Trump based off of what I've seen it from the guy. But then as he starts becoming more involved in what he's doing and the wealth and the power, then you start noticing these little things that he starts to do, and it's almost like, wait a minute. Roy Cohn, he always has his hands like this, you know, and he's always looking at you like this. And then you have Donald Trump in it where he's kind of like smirking a little bit, and he's like putting his hand up and stuff. And that's something that he does over time. And to me, what that made me realize was, hey, is this just sort of what the greed and wealth does? Is it sort of makes you so egotistical where you're kind of almost adopting this new persona and a new way that you want people to look at you in terms of maybe like carefree or something like that? I know I might be looking into it a little bit too much, but I saw this film as something more powerful than, okay, we're going to talk bad about Trump. We're going to talk bad about this person or that person. I felt like it went a lot deeper than that, and that's why I really appreciated it. I was really nervous going into this film because politics don't really interest me too much anyway, but I was just very intrigued with this because of the director behind it, and I really wanted to see what all the hubbub was about. Another thing that I want to talk about in this, which I don't know if I'm going to throw a filter on this video or not, we'll have to see. But another thing that I want to talk about is the cinematography. The cinematography in this was outstanding. It was VHS, so it took me a second to sort of pick up on some things, but whenever I was watching the 80s portions, they make it look like VHS quality, where it looks like you're watching like a TV movie or something, and it's very uniquely done, where you have a lot of these shots that are very reminiscent of something like Kubrick, you know, where you're looking at all these wides and excuse me, everything's all symmetrical and stuff, but you have like this sort of grainy layer over it that reminds you of VHS quality. And I just love it, because I do feel like we do live in an era now where back in the day you had a lot of film grain because you were shooting on film. Or you were working with a lower budget, or you were filming in 16mm, or you were filming in 8mm. You shot in a specific aspect ratio because of limitations with theaters or televisions or such. And I feel like now it's all been done before, and now when it comes to what your film looks like or what aspect ratio you decide to shoot your film in, I feel like at that point it's more of a stylistic choice. We've moved past the limitations and stuff. Like when I look at somebody talking about, like, and again, I know it's a very strange comparison, but I have to bring it up, where you look at a Kubrick film and you look at people like, oh, okay, well, what aspect ratio did he shoot on? Was it 4:3, or did he mean for it to be shown in 1:8:5:1, or did he mean for it to be shown in 1:6:6:1, you know? Because when people were viewing 4:3 back in the day, they didn't see bars. That was just sort of how it was, and it, like being projected on the screen. But now on a 16:9 television, you see that, and now it almost acts as like a time capsule, or it sort of does something to where it can evoke emotion through visuals telling the story. And that's one thing that I loved about The Apprentice, was it was filmed in this 4:3 TV sort of VHS look, but it had all of this stellar cinematography where everything was, you know, at times would look very colorful and symmetrical and very beautiful. And another thing that I love what they did with the film, which could have been very, very, very risky, was they took a lot of stock footage from the time period in New York and they morphed it in with the film, which some people would say is lazy because you're just using stock footage. But for me, I would say it's genius, because there were times where I didn't know what was real, what they were filming, and what wasn't. So it kind of just morphs. Like you'll literally look at some stock footage of the 1970s, real 1970s footage of, you know, the city itself, and then it'll switch and you'll see Donald Trump walking down the street with Sebastian Stan. And it's so intriguing. Like I loved how it was executed. But The Apprentice was absolutely phenomenal. I really loved it. Again, I don't know based off what your politics are, if you're going to like it or you're not going to like it. It could go either way, but for me personally, as a film fan, I really enjoyed it. I really appreciated it. It was probably one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. Second favorite film of the year, right behind Challengers, and I could see it maybe going up on a rewatch, because I thought Jeremy Strong was great. I thought Sebastian Stan was great. Maria Bakalova, I wish she had a little bit more to work with. But she was great from, you know, what I saw. And yeah, the performances were great. Everything was just on point with it. I just really enjoyed it. And also there might be a little bit of a bias because I recently just finished Succession. But yeah, guys, check out The Apprentice, do or don't. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a thumbs up and maybe subscribe. Let me know what you thought of The Apprentice down in the comments below. Check out my link tree. You can check out my filmography and all that. Always looking to meet with other filmmakers and collaborators. But anyway, take it easy, and I'll see you next time.